You're wondering, I bet many of you are going to see yourselves in these pictures because I found them all over the internet, and one of them I definitely took from the NYCJ website. So thank you so much for your beautiful photos. Is everyone able to see my screen? Okay, awesome. So we're going to talk about how to lobby a legislator on tribal sovereignty. And this is particularly a guide for young Mainers, but it works for all Mainers too. And so it's really important when you think about going to the state house, going to the legislature, that you start with preparation and research. And oh, I wanted to mention that I will be using tribal sovereignty and Wabanaki sovereignty I'll be using both of them. I think it's really important that we call it Wabanaki sovereignty to name and humanize the people that we're talking about. And it's not just, the tribe. We know that um, all of, cultural traditions, language, and everything has been erased in Indigenous cultures. So just wanting to name that it's really important that we humanize, name people accurately. So we're talking about Wabanaki sovereignty. So it's really important to know the issues about sovereignty in Maine, including the policies, legislation, and any ongoing initiatives by groups like the Wabanaki Alliance, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. It's really important to research your legislator, and today we're talking specifically about the state level representatives, but it's really important to know who's representing you at both state and federal levels. You should look up their past voting record on Wabanaki sovereignty issues, especially bills that have been prioritized by groups like the Wabanaki Alliance. You need to see how your legislators, what their side was, and look at any statements that they made, which could include giving testimony on bills. And I'll go over how to look up bills and how to find your representatives and all that stuff. But the last thing you need to know as well is understanding the opposition. So it's really helpful to know who might oppose the Wabanaki sovereignty initiatives and the arguments that they might use so that you can anticipate your own counter arguments or any questions, things that you might get from legislators. So, knowing the issue, what is Wabanaki tribal sovereignty? What is tribal sovereignty in general? It is the right of tribes to govern themselves with powers similar to federal and state governments over tribal land. So that means it is a government to government relationship and not municipality to government. So this is saying that the federal government and all the tribal governments would be on the same level, have the same say over where they live. And tribes with a government to government relationship in the US are entitled to benefits, services, and protections under federal law. However, unlike the other 570 federally recognized tribes in the United States, the Wabanaki nations in Maine have a more restrictive status due to the 1980 Settlement Act. I'm not really going to get down into the weeds about the Settlement Act during Q&A. If folks really want to ask some questions about that, we can. But I'm going to give you so many resources after that are linked to the Wabanaki Alliance and Maine Conservation Voters that goes into the history of the Settlement Acts. But the acts themselves have downgraded Wabanaki's nation's sovereignty. They've hindered their self-governance and the access to federal programs, hindering economic and community development, not only for Wabanaki nations, but also for the people who live in communities near them. So restoring Wabanaki sovereignty. It has been a mission here in Maine for the past, I don't know, 4 to 5 years, and not everyone, but there's a really good sized coalition of people who are recognizing that this is unfair, what we have in Maine. It's not the same in any other state, and it's not right. And it's time to fix it. And so there's been a lot of bipartisan efforts to modernize the settlement acts and restore Wabanaki nations to their right to self-govern. We're not there yet, but we continue to get a little bit closer each year, and the Wabanaki Alliance is certainly not going to stop this work until that is achieved. And so, researching your legislator, this is just examples. Obviously, Senator Jane Doe and Rep. John Smith are not actual representatives here, but this is just an example of, you look up your representative and you can see, did they vote in favor of this bill? Did they vote in favor of this? Um, and if we'd like, I could actually show us quickly how we could look up a bill and see how people voted. Yeah, okay. So I will switch my share to here. And our state, can everyone see like the state government website? Okay. The state government website, it's pretty old. It's pretty out of date. But we do have a new tool for looking up bills, which is okay. There are 3 different ways that you can look up bills on this website, which is kind of a lot of different ways. But I find the easiest if you know your LD number to just type it in right here. So when I go and look at the Wabanaki Alliance scorecard from this last year, and if I wanted to look up 2007, which was the an act to advance self-determination, I would be like, oh, okay, LD 2007. Let's see. And so you can see the bill here, it was passed, it was amended quite a bit, which you can see here. And if you want to read the full public law, you can find it right here as well with the fiscal notes and the amendments. You can see what committee it's in, which is judiciary. And if folks want to ask more questions about committees and stuff, we can answer that in the Q&A. But you can see here the action, what last happened, and you can see that it's signed into law here by the governor. And then what's really unique about 2007 is how many sponsors it has. I'd say typically there are about 1 to 5 sponsors on a normal bill that goes to the Maine legislature. But because of the importance of this issue, I think it had over 100 sponsors, which was incredible and just goes to show how important this issue is and how cross-cutting it is. And so if this is great, we've looked at it all. So Maggie, how do I actually see how my representative voted? You go over here to the roll calls and you can see you can see their town or their county. This is senator, so you see their county and you can see how they voted yes or no. There are there are 2 roll calls for the House, so comparing and contrasting, seeing if anyone changed their vote could be really important. But we can dig more into how to use the State House website later. But let me get my screen back up. So, and so once you know how your legislator has voted, you need to understand the opposition. And this these are just some common arguments that people in Maine make for against tribal sovereignty. I do not agree with any of them. I think that none of them actually have standing, but I think it's really important that we know where people are coming from so we can effectively argue against it. And so number 1, some people say that tribal sovereignty would infringe on state authority and Maine's jurisdiction. Some people worry that tribal control over land and resources would hurt economic development. These 2 are thinly veiled. This last one is not veiled at all. It is outright racist, anti-Indigenous sentiment, promoting stereotypes and disinformation to discredit the need for tribal sovereignty. So all 3 of those are happening at the State House when we're talking about these bills. And so it's really important to recognize not only that where people are coming from, but how we can argue against these. And the resources I'll be sharing with you after has some really good counter arguments, especially the industrial and business interests, because it is shown that elsewhere in the US, in Indian country, they have seen an economic boom of 30%. And that is unheard of. And we are not seeing that in Maine at all. And even as our income has grown 25% in the state of Maine, it has only grown 9% for the Wabanaki Nations. And so it is clear that there are some real issues with the way that we work with our Wabanaki allies and communities. And I'll share those after. And I think one of the most important things when talking to legislators, so you're in the state house, you made it there. It's really important that you're making this personal, sharing your name, where you live, and why Wabanaki sovereignty is really important to you. If Wabanaki sovereignty affects your friends, family, or community, please mention that connection. A personal story about how this issue impacts your life and life or beliefs can also help your legislators see its importance on a human level, which I think in this issue in particular, it is so human. There is nothing more human than rights and access to land and access to water and just being able to, live where you need to. And so I think that this is really the most important thing you can tell your legislator. And for me, my personal story, I have grown up knowing that the history of the land I lived on was something really important that I know. So from a very young age, as the daughter of two historians and one specializing in colonial America, I often heard about the settlers who founded Bridgeton, which is the town I'm from, and I was obsessed with the old settlement in the spring behind my elementary school, where you could see, all of the ruins and everything. And I was just so enamored by the people who, and I'm a history nerd, but it was so important to me to know where we had come from, who had been on this land before. And then as I grew older and realized that I actually only know like a quarter of the story, it's been a really personal journey for me as I navigate the same feelings of needing to know the history of the place I live in and the very harsh reality that the oppressors, my ancestors included, are the ones who wrote the histories. So just acknowledging that I love my parents so much. I love history. I love historians, but man, have they gotten it wrong for so long. And so it's really important that we're doing our best to make sure that we're accurately talking about everyone. And so that's my personal connection. And so that is what I talk about with my representatives, even though the Portland representatives are fantastic and are already on this side. And so next, and this is often, I understand that as young people, it's always, present yourself professionally. You need to dress your best, blah, blah, blah. A lot of young people don't have access to fancy business clothes. And so I just really want to make sure that there's no need for formal business wear in the State House. It is just looking, what you would wear to a holiday party at your family's, or just something that like what you'd wear to school, maybe not ripped jeans, but it really, and there's so many, there's already so many barriers to young people getting to the State House. I would never want outfits to be that final barrier. So I do want to offer my phone number, and just to say that if you're going to the State House and you want to be like, is this outfit okay? You can text me and ask me and I will tell you, because I just want to make this as easy as possible because everyone should be at the State House. Um, maintain a calm demeanor. That's not the easiest thing to do. It's really easy to say. And I know I have been in my position about 3 years. And when I first joined MCV, I thought that legislators were superheroes. I thought that they could do no wrong. I thought that I was just so nervous about saying the wrong thing in front of them. And I'm lucky that I've got to work so closely with them because I've realized, wow, they're just humans, and some of them are numbskulls. And so it's really just recognizing their grandparents too, their children too, their siblings too. Like they have the same relationships that we all do. And at the end of the day, they're human just like us. And they really like it when people are friendly, and just show that they're really interested in what you're talking about. And so I'd say stay calm and speak with confidence. Just showing that your passion, which should come through that personal story that you're telling them, really, that's what they want to hear. They want to know that you're passionate about it. They want to know that you've done a bit of research about it. You definitely do not need to know everything. If they ask you a question and you don't know it, say, I don't know, but I'll follow up with you. And then make sure you follow up with them because that will build that relationship of trust with the legislator. Um, and then finally, yeah, be approachable. These are people, they want to laugh, they want to have a hug. They they really like yummy food at the state house. So just being as friendly as you can, because often I know it's really easy when this is such an emotional topic, and it seems to me like a topic that is black and white, common sense. There's a right and there's a wrong. And not everyone sees it like that. And so coming from a place of understanding and kindness and positivity really can help. And making sure that you're sticking to what being clear and direct in your asks. So you need make sure to state your ask, make sure that the legislator knows specifically which bill you're talking about. We don't have a specific bill right now. I know that the Wabanaki Alliance is working on one to put forward. So whichever bill this year that will be for sovereignty, that's the one you will be referencing. But keep it concise so that they know exactly what you're advocating for. And make sure that you're sticking to that issue. Because yeah, there are a lot of issues that I could talk about too. Environmental justice is so important to me. And it is linked to this, but for legislators, for making sure that you're really getting that message across and telling them which way to vote, just stick with one single issue. And then when you build that relationship, you can come back to them and say, hey, let's also talk about this. And bringing the issue home. This is definitely just wrapping up how important tribal sovereignty is to the state, how important it is for Wabanaki sovereignty to come. It strengthens communities in this land we now call Maine by supporting sustainable economic development, protecting natural resources, and preserving Indigenous cultures. Empowering Wabanaki nations to self-govern and make decisions about their own land and resources benefits all Mainers through environmental stewardship, job creation, and cultural enrichment. So it's really just important that we, tell our legislators this is important to us for a moral reason, but it's also going to drastically benefit the state economically, environmentally, and it's the right thing to do. And so after, make sure you say thank you. It's really important to follow up with gratitude. So after your conversation, send that thank you email that says a quick recap of the meeting. This reminds the legislator of your discussion and shows respect for your time. Mention any commitments that you made to provide further information and please follow through. That'll build that relationship of trust. And if you did promise them to send them information and you don't, that could in the future not gain that trust. They may not want to talk to you again. Or, they just wouldn't be as open to listening. And so staying connected, even after the initial conversation, just say a thank you if they vote the right way. Super important, especially in LTEs in the newspaper. Legislators love to be thanked when they do the right thing. And we should thank them to keep them doing the right thing. And just, yeah, if you want to do a polite check-in on how Wabanaki sovereignty is going, people really appreciate that because they know that you're watching. And it's really important that legislators in Augusta know we're watching them. We're watching how you're going to vote. Um, and then building an ongoing relationship. So this is your local representative. You might see them in Hannaford. You might see them at a hockey game. Say hi to them. Ask how they're doing, ask how their family are. Just really building that ongoing and human relationship is really crucial. And that's how we work across the aisle. That's how we build these really important relationships. And I think that is all I have for my slideshow, but I'm so happy to answer some questions and we can go through the websites more, whatever would be really helpful for folks.